What's up, my brothers from another mother? Welcome to this month's premium piece of content for my Patreons at tier 3 and up. I just want to remind you guys that this is, I think, the ninth installment actually in this playlist. Let me just quickly check. Tier 3 Patreon. Yeah, I've got 9 videos in that playlist now. So if you haven't watched the other ones, go back or maybe just watch through the playlist if you have some time. I try to keep these around 30 to 45 minutes, and they're always deeper topics. This month I selected a topic on female mate switching hypothesis, or the mate switching hypothesis is the topic of this study. I actually ran this by Sean Smith, who's the author of the Tactical Guide to Women, and I sent him a copy, and he really likes the author. He's fond of the studies that he's released for clinical psychologists and finds him to be fairly red-pilled. So I was happy to hear that. What I'll do is in the link to this video, I'll link you this study in case you want to read it. I basically just highlighted it, went through a whole bunch of stuff, made some notes, and of course applied experiences from my own life and guys that I've coached. So let's dive straight into this. I'm going to start by actually reading off the conclusion from the study because it will make a good segue into the intro, believe it or not. But it explains, and again, some of this stuff for you guys will not be brand new, but it'll help shed a lot more light on female nature and why women behave certain ways in the way that they do when it comes to switching up on guys, the monkey branching notion. Conclusion. Explains why mated women incur substantial risks with affairs. It also explains why women cultivate backup mates. It explains why dissatisfaction leads to a greater interest in alternative mates, and it provides predictions as to when she may activate mate switching strategies. So I'm going to probably switch from saying mate switching to monkey branching because it's probably a more well-known term in our space anyway. So introduction. Let me say this. The notion of lifelong monogamy does not characterize the primary mating patterns of human beings. This is something that has been arrived to at the end of this study. It's been mentioned a number of times in videos that I've done. There's a great book by Christopher Ryan called Sex at Dawn, which if you haven't read, you should check it out. There's lots of interesting dialogue and background into basically the evolutionary history of human beings. Human beings are promiscuous by nature. I know that there are some people that are new to the Patreon community that have posted in Facebook that have suggested that things like marriage is like the cornerstone to civilized society, and that's simply not true. Grab a copy of Sex at Dawn and read it, and then come back and feedback from there. But again, clinical psychologists are arriving at the same thing that Chris Ryan did with his study. So I'm going to dive straight into this. Monogamy is a great notion. I think human beings are more monogamish or designed to operate in a more open sphere. I know men anyway typically operate from the scope of spreading seeds. That's what we do. Women look for security when it comes to mating because they want to, they're in a vulnerable position when it comes to being able to reproduce, have children, raise the children, because both her and the child for the first year or two anyway are fairly vulnerable, and for the first week or even months after the childbirth are very vulnerable. So there's very different strategies that are employed. We've talked about things like alpha fucks and beta bucks before, where women will choose to, actually that was brought up in this study too, where it's considered the good genes theory. Women will tend to mate with the strong alpha guy, but they may unplug from him and go to more of the beta soft, the beta buck sort of guy at some point, especially if her hypergamy dictates that it means that optimizing for it and finding somebody with provisioning needs versus the good genes works. So it's totally within their scope of operation to go from let's get the good genes here and get knocked up to finding, daddy warbucks to take care of her when it comes to money. Men are simple. Ancestral males increase reproductive success by obtaining sexual access to fertile women in addition to a primary partner. Men will list sex as a primary reason for being with a woman. Only a small percentage of men report falling in love during affairs. So just keep that in mind. Men are spending time with women for the primary purpose of engaging in banging. I'll say it that way just to keep it clear. Women are less simple. Securing the good genes from a sexual partner is usually their primary objective alongside with investment. And that doesn't always have to come from the same partner. Remember that. The good genes theory can, of course, be alpha fucks, beta bucks. I think ideally, smart women will look for both of those traits in the same male. They don't always find it, so it's totally within their realm of behavior to do knocked up by the alpha, providing by the beta. So let's hop into the adaptive problems relevant to a woman's mate switching strategy. Pardon me. So from a woman's perspective, nothing is a guarantee. I made a note here to tell the story of a friend of mine. I'm just going to delete the name, so when I copy and paste this into the, I guess the show notes, as I'm going to call it, in the description, in case you want to read this. When it comes to women, they don't put a lot of emphasis on the guy is forever, especially if she's a single mom. What they know or they learn at some point is relationships come and go. Men will come and go in their lives, and they can't rely on trusting that guy to be around the entire time, forever and ever, until kingdom come. And it's never been that way throughout history. In fact, I would argue that, and I made this argument earlier this year in a public video that I uploaded to the channel about heartbreak and why women get over guys so much easier. And women have been conditioned throughout history because men are the disposable sex. Men have died in wars, in conflict, in conquests, in hunts, in accidents. And, because women don't take those risks, they have been conditioned, or gotten used to anyway, to mate switching behavior for a very long time, hundreds of thousands, possibly even millions of years, where, they might have mated with Bob and he got smoked by a saber-toothed tiger, and all of a sudden, she's with somebody else. Or may have had several mates throughout her entire lifespan. Again, the notion of monogamy or exclusivity comes from agriculture. It's talked about in the book Sex at Dawn. And it's basically, we got smart and said, let's plant crops here. We'll domesticate animals and we'll harvest them. So we've got vegetable matter and animal protein, and we don't have to run around looking for shit anymore, hunting and gathering. And because we had land, farm tools and oxen, and became a lot more autonomous and more of like an agricultural, sort of like a manufacturing sort of species, we said, well, we've got kids. We want to make sure that those things go down to our kids so they can provision for their children and our genes pass on throughout time. So the whole point of monogamy was making sure that the mother of our kids was in fact the mother of our kids. So we demanded exclusivity in exchange for her sexual fidelity, if that makes sense. So yeah, a couple of women that I've talked to, I've made notes about this, and guys that I've coached on have definitely echoed that sentiment, where we know that from a woman's perspective, they're not looking for or expecting you to be around till the end of time. Okay, they're completely fine with and conditioned, in fact, to bounce from one guy to the next, and we've seen that in their behavior, and a lot of you guys will echo that sentiment. Evolutionary hazards from environment, other species, other humans could render her mate debilitated or dead. A man's mate value, his SMV, sexual marketplace value, depends more on just physical conditions. He could lose status, be a bad father, fail as a hunter, be abusive, or prove infertile. Where a man provides more costs and fewer benefits, so his SMV declines, this is what triggers mate switching many times. So this is an adaptive problem that women have to respond to. Another trigger is when women's SMV goes up. Ascend in status, acquire new knowledge or skills. Let me tell you the story. I'm going to take out his name over here because I made an insert. So I used to have this shop that I would take my cars to. And I became friendly with the guys because I'm just a car guy. So, if you guys have watched my videos, you already know that. So, we chatted up. He'd give me rides home back and forth whenever some treatment was needed or dealt with. And he was telling me the story about how his wife decided to go back to school. This was probably... well, I'll put it to you this way. This was about 4 to 5 years before he died. And what ended up happening was he put his wife through law school, bought a condo downtown in Toronto. His practice was in the suburbs, so it didn't make a lot of sense for her to travel back and forth. So they had like 3 kids. They were late teenagers. She wanted to go to law school, become a lawyer, bought a condo downtown. She went to school down there, worked crazy hours, got her law degree, made a ton of money. And guess who shows up? Chad Thundercock. And guess what? Chad Thundercock is of higher status than, let's call him Bob the mechanic, or he owned the shop. So let's put it that way. He did well. He had, I think, 6 bays, a bunch of guys working for him. It was always busy. So he was doing fairly well. But at the end of the day, he was a mechanic. So he was a grease monkey, I suppose, if you will. So Wife gets a law degree, increases her status. Chad Thundercock shows up. She starts banging him, and she divorces him. At the end of the day, this guy died a year and a half after she divorced him from a heart attack. He was found dead in his shop. So I wanted to share that story because things will trigger increases in a woman's sexual marketplace value. So even though he paid for her law degree in the condo downtown and for her to increase her SMV, because she ascended much higher, or in her perceived view, ascended much higher than he did, he was the one that got ditched. And, you know, a year and a half after he got divorced, heartbroken, the guy dies from a heart attack and he's found dead on the floor of his shop. Anyway, so ascendant status, acquire new knowledge or skills. She may also become unencumbered, i.e. a child is more self-sufficient. So as, you know, the children grow up, there's actually two stages where women tend to divorce men more. It's at around the age of 7 or 8. And around 19. 19 is, of course, when the kids leave home, and 7 or 8 is when kids become more autonomous. They're able to clothe themselves. They can even make, you know, small meals for themselves if they get hungry or they want a snack. So again, the three reasons again are: 1, his SMV declines, hers goes up, the presence of potential mates or higher sexual market value mates that were previously not present or available, aka she becomes a lawyer, is exposed to Chads downtown in law firms. Now become available in her social circle. So i.e. new job, new school, or Chad shows up. Let's talk about the cost of mate switching. Good timing so far. Starts with the potential damage to reputation components of her mate value. Okay, she doesn't want to be perceived as a hoe. So she already knows this. Women understand that this is a problem for them. Divorced women in some cultures demand a lower bride price. I don't think that's necessarily true in Western cultures in North America or Western Europe, but there are places in the world where a woman that's been divorced doesn't have the same market value or the sexual marketplace value as somebody that's younger that's never been married. So just keep that in mind. And they know that. In cultures where family honors, mate switching can levy costs to the entire family. You've got more older school cultures that believe in more traditional values that will be ingrained in her. So if her parents are fresh off the boat from very traditional value systems, you know, let's say old school Italy, they come to Canada, they have their kid here, she might have those values ingrained in her. 2 to 3 generations later, not so much. So just keep that in mind. If infidelity precedes the breakup, her SMV may go down if branded a cheater. So this is a serious cost that women need to deal with when it comes to mate switching behavior or monkey branching. In almost all cases, which I'll get into, infidelity does precede her mate switching or monkey branching behavior. Another cost of mate switching to her is potential loss of support from family or in-laws. Translation: the switch better be worth it. Essentially, former mate may inflict costs, i.e. withdrawal of something or money, spousal support. But family law has fixed that for the most part in the Western world, so that's not as great a risk. There could be damaging info that's disclosed or even physical harm. Bottom line, there's a premium placed on sexual exclusivity in public judgment of women. Okay, it's why she keeps it covert. It's why she doesn't broadcast to the world that she's banging different guys or, you know, entertaining the notion of having a coffee with another guy, even though she's married. Marriage isn't a buffer from monkey branching. Just understand that, guys. All right, let's get into monitoring a partner's mate value. Women will monitor your mate value covertly and track future mate value based on her own assessment. The need for tracking does not end after the mate is selected. I think that's where a lot of guys go incredibly wrong in long-term relationships and especially marriage, is they think that their wives are no longer tracking who they are in the world and their place in society. They've said their vows, I do, till death do us part, forever and ever, till kingdom come, blah, 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 and sickness and health. And they think that, let's just calm down, get complacent, get fat, sit on the couch, sit there, watch sports, not do anything. And women aren't paying any attention. Women are watching. And guys, I can tell you this right now. I've done hundreds of coaching calls now on all these different platforms. And the consistent trend when women leave their husbands is they got soft. The guys got soft. They stopped chasing excellence. And women's need for tracking continues even after living long-term relationships, marriage, whatever it is. I've said this before, guys. It's a lot of work to do well in a long-term relationship, in a marriage. I'm not for marriage. I mean, I'm I'm cool with the idea of being with a woman on a longer term basis and even reproducing, but the idea of marriage is fucked. You guys already know that. Family law just ruins it for us. So I'm using these terms a little bit loosely, but I think you guys understand my content by now and you get the idea of it. So a woman is constantly tracking her man's sexual marketplace value, usually with shit tests, across the relationship to invest in or detach from the relationship. She's always looking for signals. The investment in the relationship would mean closeness. She's sweet, she takes care of you. She's banging you often. She's turned on by you. If she's distant, cold, frigid, out a lot, hanging out with her friends, those are good indications that she's dissatisfied with the relationship and looking to detach from the relationship or perhaps monkey branch out. Monitoring mate's value. Let me continue. Inadequate financial support is one of the top reasons for divorce. So guys that are unable to bring home the bacon, to display competency, is the biggest reason why women bounce from marriages. If a woman's mate retention effort correlates with her man's income and status striving, let that sink in for a second. Women continue to compare partners' SMV trajectory to alternatives. When the current mate's SMV compares unfavorably, she considers possibilities. Guys, these are all, again, summarized notes from the study. When a woman looks at you and she sees your SMV like this, or maybe like this, or maybe like this, and there's a guy at her new place of employment because she's got a better job and she's making more money and she's got more social status or access to a higher caliber of people, and Chad Thundercock works there or comes along one day and flirts with her and says, hey, you want to grab a coffee? And she sees his trajectory considerably higher than yours. That's mate switching behavior. That's what will trigger women to consider the upgrade, right? If there's sufficient interest from the new potential mate, it's not uncommon for women to take advantage of that coffee. Okay. And, she'll make up her reasons as to why, which, we'll get into a little bit more of as we continue on. Let's talk about monitoring her own mate value. So we've covered monitoring her partner's mate value. Let's talk about monitoring her own. Physically attractive women have elevated standards for prospective mates compared to less attractive women. I think that's fairly straightforward. We're not breaking any new ground there. Things that make her SMV go up: elimination of rivals. Okay. So if she's working in a new space or you guys move to a new community where there's less attractive or fatter women there and her mate value goes up, then that will increase her SMV internally in her own head. Inheritance of resources. Let's say she was a nobody and Daddy Warbucks dies and, assigns a $10 million estate to her. She's all of a sudden got access to money, and she might find a way to mate switch out of the relationship if she sees no value in you or doesn't want to share the new pot of gold with you. And the third thing that makes her SMV go up is generally increase in status, which we've already talked about. When a woman's SMV goes up substantially, she is more dissatisfied with her current partner. 2, more likely to evade partners' mate guarding efforts, meaning she's ovulating and she wants to go out with her friends and you say, who are you going out with tonight? Or I don't want you to go out tonight. She's going to evade those very, very clearly. So those are signals and signs that things are not going well and she's viewing her status going up. 3, more likely to cultivate backup mates. 4, more likely to initiate relationships with a higher SMV men. And 5, less inclined to stay with the current partner. It's a summary of monitoring her own mate value. Let's move on to monitoring the value and interests of potential alternative mates. Still good for time. Awesome. There are 3 components of potential alternatives that are tracked. 1, interest. Does the new prospect show attention, desire, attraction for the mated woman? 2, SMV and SMV trajectory of the new potential prospect. How does this prospect compare to the current mate? And 3, eligibility. Is the prospect willing to take her on, or are the obstacles an issue? So does this new prospect have an existing wife, obligations, offspring, distance travel, geographics, demographics, whatever? She's going to consider, again, interest, SMV and trajectory of his SMV, and eligibility, whether or not he's available. High partner commitment to mate can water this down quite a bit. So let's use like religious examples. If committed Mormonism is in her lifeblood and she's been married for a long time, it's unlikely if she gets exposed to a job and Chad Thundercock comes along and asks her out for a coffee that she's going to ditch her husband to go out for the coffee. Those stronger religious core values tend to kind of like water that mate switching behavior off a bit. So just consider that, because there are some things that will skew this data. Women show decreased relationship satisfaction when they perceived they are higher in mate value than their romantic partner. Let me share this story. I think I might have mentioned this before, but I dated a single mom for about 3 years after this divorce. One of the things that she told me about why she got divorced was this lady was a school teacher. They make about 96 grand here in Canada, and her husband kept quitting his job. And she said because they would be mean to him at work, and it was like this disparaging way that she would say it, like this guy didn't have a backbone and he was a pussy, and he would keep quitting his job. And she would get really frustrated with having this guy sitting around home moping, depressed. I think he was on antidepressants too, she said, and stuff like that. So for about 2 years, he was only employed for about half the time. She only sucked it up for about 2 years before she ditched him. So if a woman's not satisfied or deems her SMV has gone up and his has gone down because he's not working and he's a pussy and he can't provide, there is absolutely no reason why she's going to stick around. And that's why she bounced on that guy. To show decrease. So bottom line, women will move on if they see that their SMV has gone up. Hypothesized outputs of mate switching adaptations. Adaptations include 1. Cultivating backup mates. 2. Implementing affairs. 3. Emotional disengagement from her primary mate. 4. Breaking up. And then 5. Remating. Those are the 5 steps. So let's talk about those one after the other. First, cultivating backup mates. Average being 3 backups. Women on average, based on what they found in this study, have about 3 backups. They got 3 in the kitty, 3 in the pipeline. Okay. I'm not sure that all 3 of them, well, I'm fairly certain that most of them are not banging 3 at the same time, but they definitely have them as a backup plan. I've seen this in women in many occasions. I've coached a few women. I don't talk to very many when they book my time, but they've definitely reported monkey branching behavior that's mirroring everything that I've gone through over here. So it's not uncommon for women to have more than 1 backup mate. The study says it's an average of 3. Women more than men reported being extremely upset if their backup entered into a long-term relationship. Let that marinate on you for a second, okay? They get pissed off even if they're married and their backup mate gets into a long-term relationship or a marriage. Guys don't care, because guys, when we have extracurricular activities, as we like to call it, or plate spinning or whatever it is, we're just there for the sex. So we're not so inclined to get that upset if she's going to go get married to somebody else. Research on opposite sex friendships supports the backup mate theory. Women that have male friends, they're not male friends, usually. There's some kind of backup involved in there. Just consider that. Women, not men, prioritize economic resources and physical prowess in their opposite sex friends. Okay. Number 2, implementing affairs. So that's second step. Can be emotional, briefly sexual, some are both, and they can last years. It serves key functions. Number 1, mate insurance, in case he dies, becomes incompetent, infertile, can't hunt, can't provision, whatever it is, or quits his job and he's a pussy or something like that. So it provides mate insurance. And 2, it provides close assessment of potential replacement. How good is this potential replacement going to be to replace Bob? If Paul is this, let's spend some time with him. Let's have a coffee. Let's ask him questions and do the interview. Maybe we'll bang him to see what he's like in the bedroom, sort of thing. What kind of money does he have access to? Does he have a wife? Does he have kids? Where does he live? What kind of financial resources does he have? What does he do for a living? His entire mate trajectory. So there's some close assessment of potential replacement involved there. Affairs help determine if mate switching should happen or not. Okay, it's kind of like a trial run. Let's hop the fence and see if the grass is greener for a bit, because we can always hop back if we keep it covert on the down low. All right, third step, emotional disengagement, the process of psychologically divesting from the current partner. A very good sign that your wife, partner, spouse, whoever it is, your girlfriend, is not that interested or invested in the relationship tends to be in that time of the month when she's ovulating. And if you haven't seen the video, it's in this playlist on why you should track your partner's menstrual cycle. Is when she's ovulating, she becomes really naggy. When she's ovulating, she's at her horniest. She should be wanting to fuck you. But if she's nagging you at that time or going out with her girlfriends, that's a bad sign. That's emotional disengagement. Let's talk about number 4, breaking up. There are complicated webs of adaptive problems. So a dumped mate may resist, deploy preventative measures, threats. I'm going to take the kids. You're never going to see them again. I'm going to hurt you, whatever it might be. Women must try to minimize costs of the ejected mate. Okay. The good thing about women on that scope is family law is on their side, and they know that. I mean, any woman that's gotten divorced has done the research, and they know they're going to be well taken care of. So they're fairly well covered from that aspect, which again, guys, is one of the main reasons why you should never get married. I'm not saying don't reproduce. I'm saying marriage is a bad idea because family law protects women. Basically, you never want to live in a way that the state, meaning the government or the legal system, views you as marriage. So if you guys break up and then it doesn't work out, make sure they can't slap family law on whatever's falling apart. It's as simple as that. And you got to talk to a family lawyer in your area to make that clear. Back to this thing though. Another issue is to ensure that she is perceived to have initiated the breakup because people infer that the injector has higher SMV. So if she's going to leave, she wants to be able to demonstrate publicly, because of saving face, that she was the one that left you. It just increases her SMV and it lowers his, and that's what they want to do. Both men and women overclaim their ejective status. So, I left her, and she's going to claim that she left me. I mean, you ask any married couple who left who separately, and they'll probably both tell you that they both dumped the other person, or even if they're dating, boyfriend, girlfriend sort of thing. Number 5, remating. If a woman breaks up without immediately transitioning to a new mate, she must compete, attract, and choose on the open sexual marketplace. Women prefer to monkey branch for this very reason. She's with Bob. Paul comes along. She starts banging him, initiates an affair, decides that he's higher value. She starts nagging. Bob doesn't want to bang him anymore, kind of starts to let go, pushes some pressure, tries to find reasons why to get divorced. And then Paul's right there, and then they hook up in their new relationship. I've seen this time and time and time again. Not many women will admit to it. I've coached some women who have asked about divorce, and some of those things pop up over and over again. I've seen even women in some entrepreneurs groups that I'm members of who have monkey branched from one husband to another guy very, very quickly, and they don't stay in the open sexual marketplace. Because let's be honest, they know that their wall is around 30, 35, whenever it is that they're hitting into it. They don't want to compete, attract, or choose on the open sexual marketplace. It's far easier for them to monkey branch, and that's why they do it. Thus, adaptations for mate switching include assessing potential new mates prior to a breakup to reduce damage of re-entering the mating market. Women that mate switch experience less negative effects over breakup, less damage to self-esteem, and fewer costs. All right, let's wrap this up. Comparing the mate switching hypothesis for why women have affairs. The leading hypothesis is women have adaptations for securing investment from one man while cuckolding him in order to obtain good genes from an affair partner. So that's the alpha fucks, beta bucks. Relationship dissatisfaction is the most powerful predictor of a woman's infidelity, but not a man's infidelity. Men will just bang. We want to spread our seeds, and it's as simple as that. We want to be with attractive women and as many as possible. But the dissatisfaction a woman has in a relationship, this kind of ties into Briffault's law, which I've talked about. I've done videos before on the subject. And, a man is only going to be around in a woman's life so long as she deems him useful, so long as she deems him bringing value. It doesn't matter that he spent a couple $100,000 extra on the house that she wanted and renovating the bathroom and buying her the car that she wanted and sending the kids to private school and being a good dad. If she deems at some point that his value is ended, maybe he's lost his job, maybe he quits working. Actually, I've got a very good story to share with you. Had a coaching call a few weeks ago. Guy was married for 25 years, 4 kids. Lived in, well, I'm not going to say where. Lived in a very expensive city, probably one of the most expensive ones in North America. And his wife started banging Chad Thundercock after he quit his job. He was a investment guy, made a shit ton of money, didn't like doing what he was doing, decided to quit his job and live off the passive income, which was sufficient for the family, but inadequate in her eyes. So she saw his SMV going down. And of course, when you quit your job and you change your lifestyle, you probably change your behavior. Maybe you get a little more depressed. Maybe he starts getting a little more woosah and starts meditating and less, chasing of the excellence and maybe working on his own shit. A pivot, if you will. But she saw it as a decline in his SMV, which is why she went out and started fucking Chad Thundercock. It's not uncommon. This is the biggest predictor, the most powerful predictor for women's infidelity, is relationship dissatisfaction. So with that, awesome timing, 30 minutes. I'm glad I kept it shorter. With that, I want to thank you guys for helping me create premium content like this. I spent a lot of time distilling the study. I mean, if you want to read it, it's there. I'll link it below. But these are my summarized notes on mate switching hypothesis, aka monkey branching. Leave me a comment below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any friends or anybody that might be interested in becoming a patron, you know where to send them. And again, guys, I really appreciate you allowing me to create this sort of content and give back to you guys with sharing these stories and experiences and helping you guys all become better, more effective men on the sexual marketplace. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you guys in the next one. And again, there's an entire playlist. Go watch them all. If you guys are new to the Patreon channel, or sorry, the premium content, go back and watch the older ones because there's tons of value. See you guys in the next one. Peace.